Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday afternoon. Today, we are going to be talking about something straight from the headlines. We're going to be talking about the report card, the school report card that everybody read about last week or heard about on the news, talking about the pandemic's effect on learning. We have Dr. Skyler Kelly here to discuss it with us. She's going to tell us a little bit about what she does. But first, I want to remind you that if you have some questions for Dr. Skyler, put them in the comment section. I'll be looking for those and we will address them. You should know that Dr. Skyler is a clinical psychologist, a health psychologist, and a developmental neuropsychology expert. And all of that is to say she knows what's going on with the brain, especially with our kids. Yeah. So we read last week, or we saw on the news, that 4th and 8th grade fell in reading. Their test scores fell in reading last year. And the largest decline was in math. Yeah. 8th graders, that's right in our demographic. Those are some middle schoolers, preteens, but we also heard that ACT, the college admissions test, that those scores were down. And so those are our high school seniors. So from both ends of our demographic, scores are down in very important areas. Not only that, but the racial gaps in testing widen during the shutdown. So even though even though we're back to school, there are things that we need to do that we can do at home to help our kids because they have to make up for this time. Otherwise it's going to snowball, right? So enough time has passed. The pandemic is shifting and we're finally getting data. And that's what the data is telling us, is that we have some work to do in schools and at home.
Yes, so, we do.
Dr. Skyler is going to discuss that with us. First, she's going to tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to meet you, at least with the video. And I'm so happy to be here to talk about this really important topic. So the nation's report card came out, and it's the NAEP assessment of reading and math. And these folks have been doing this since 1990. And this is the biggest drop in the history of this organization that they've ever seen. And this is concerning because we now see, the impact of the COVID pandemic, even though these folks are really careful to say, well, we can't assign cause and effect to this. But the timing makes it pretty clear what this was about. And before I became a psychologist, I was a teacher. So I've been on both sides of the desk as a teacher and a parent, and then on the sidelines as a psychologist. And hey, I probably have done thousands of psychoeducational assessments for kids to get special needs met and to get accommodations, as well as supports in school for 30 years. So I'm coming at this sort of like seeing the big picture here. So, the thing that is concerning for me as a parent and educator, maybe for you too, are the 8th grade scores. Because the 8th grade scores really, really fell, and especially the scores in math. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is a concern, and it's across the board, like states, across all types of ethnic groups, what we are seeing, especially for the 8th graders, is that they don't have the math skills that they will need for other types of courses, like the science courses. Okay, because you need math for physics. Okay, so if their math scores are super low and they're going to be tracked into 9th grade, where a lot of schools around the nation start physics now in 9th grade, you're going to be lost. Same thing with, your geometry. Okay, let's say you have very weak math skills and then you want to take economics in high school. Those weak math schools are going to come back and get you. So this is very concerning. One of the things that also is interesting to me, and now we're going to get into some differences in terms of economic resources, right? So the kids that had a quiet place to study and their own computer did much better. So now we see, disparity in access to learning and access to environmental learning, and what is the optimal environment in which to live, to learn. And if you didn't have your own computer, if you didn't have a quiet place to go to school during the day, you lost a lot of traction. So the other interesting thing was there weren't much differences, maybe 38% to 49% of having teacher availability for extra help. So I would have thought that would have been a wider difference in terms of availability with low performers and high performers. And of course, because I used to be a special educator, I'm really concerned about our younger students who were not included in the study, who were in special education. And this is what I'm hearing from parents around the country, is that they lost such valuable time in terms of interventions because they weren't there to get the interventions. So tell me your initial thoughts of this.
So my initial thoughts are, as a parent, I hear this, it makes sense. We were all saying it, unless you were already a homeschooler, we were all saying, I'm not a teacher. How am I going to be able to do this, especially if I was working? Mm-hmm. So now we know the data is in. We know there's an issue. Some of us have seen it with our own students, and we want to know, okay, what can I do? What can I do to help move my child forward, get them where they're supposed to be so that they can continue on in their educational journey? What can I do, keeping in mind that I am not teaching them full time? They are back in school. So now, there's catch up at home and where they're expected to be at school, even though we know they've missed some benchmarks. So what can we do?
The first thing is for us as parents to demand from teachers and school districts or schools, what are their learning goals for this year and this semester? It shouldn't be a mystery, okay? What are the benchmarks? What does my child need to achieve? What should they be achieving at the end of 4th grade, for example, or before they enter middle school? What are their benchmarks before they enter high school? And a lot of people, first of all, don't know to ask that, okay? Maybe you're first generation parent in America. Maybe you don't speak English. Who's going to advocate for you? How are you going to understand that? So I really think there needs to be more parent advocacy and in understanding what the learning goals are so that you get it as a parent and that you can help guide your student towards those goals, because the student needs to be invested also. They can't have the sense of, well, this is what I'm being told to do. They need to understand what's expected of them, not just because someone told me to do something, mm-hmm. but where they should be at, what their benchmarks are and why. And a lot of that why is often missing. Why do I have to learn? Why do I have to learn algebra? Why do I have to learn geometry? Why do I have to read this book that's 300 years old?
And how do we empower them and the students and the parents to seek out, not only do they need to have to dialogue with the school, with individual teachers, et cetera, but they've done that. It's either yielded no results or they're told to do things at home. So how do we empower them to now take on the responsibility of, yes, my kid is in algebra but they missed out on some of the geometry that I know they're going to need because they're going to hopefully get to trig at some point.
Yeah.
So how do we help them at home?
Okay, so at home, one thing is to check with your school district and see if they're offering any extra help. And a lot of school districts are. A lot of school districts offered free summer school last summer, and I really hope that they continue this. I have my pre-flight checklist or my pre-homework checklist of what I go over with kids before they start their homework at night. And parents should have this, but kids need to learn how to be invested in their own education. And one of the things that happened during COVID was kids lost a sense of control over their lives. We all did, but kids especially. They were told how to breathe through a mask. They were told how to socialize 6 feet apart. They were told, where they could eat, again, 6 feet apart or at a different table. They were told when they could go to school, when they couldn't go to school, how to learn. And that diminished their sense of control. They have such little control over their lives to begin with. So number one is to help them gain a sense of perceived control by letting them know what their learning goals are. They need to be purpose-driven students. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is, do you want me to talk about what parents should do or kids should do first?
Let's do what parents should do first, since that's who's watching.
All right, got it. So focus on your students, not on other stuff. So make the focus when you get home at night, even though you're tired and you had a rough day, focus on the kids' needs. Second is understand how your child learns best. Your kid might be the type of student that works best alone in the quiet room where there's no distractions. Your kid, on the other hand, might be a kid that works better at the kitchen counter or at the kitchen table, and they don't want to be alone. So know what works best. Know the goals, as I said, because we're purpose-driven learners, what they expect. Help your child make connections between the material they learned in class and their homework, which is a really big first step. How many times have you heard this from your student? I have no idea why the teacher gave us this assignment. Why is she torturing me? I have no idea what this has to do with anything. Okay? We've all been there. And we scratch our heads and think, yeah, I have no idea why she's making you do this exercise in tedium. I don't understand. I don't understand why she's making you do this diorama. All I know is I have to go out to the store and get a bunch of stuff, right? So make those connections. If your child can't, or if the teacher didn't explain it well, why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this assignment? What did you learn today in school? Or what is this unit about that makes this homework have meaning? Because there is a connection. There is a reason. They didn't just come up with it to torture you. There is a reason, okay?
To torture the parents, not the kids.
Exactly. When you pick them up from school, ask them for a snapshot of what happened today. What you learned today? Okay, what challenged you today? You don't have to say what was difficult because that's negative. Say what challenged you today. What made you think today? What did you learn today? What did you want to learn but didn't learn today? So those are just, the last thing is, go ahead.
I'm going to just point out, and I'm really talking to the amazing Jessica, that we have your list of questions.
Okay.
So we're going to put those up now, since you just listed a couple of them. So we're going to put your list of questions to help our audience in the comment section.
Yeah, and go through the backpack. If you've got younger ones from middle school, actually go through the backpack and see what's stuffed down the bottom of it. There might be an assignment down there. And now the other thing is that most schools have tech-driven assignments. So go through the website and look online. And again, this is where I think there's a real problem with equity or non-equity in learning, because if you're a child of immigrants, your parents might not even know how to navigate that, and your assignments are on the computer. So parents need to be able to have a way that they can easily check what's due and what the long-term goals are. I also recommend that even though, small devices are handy and great, to get an old-fashioned large wall calendar that they can see, because kids tend to be really visual. And so get the large calendar and just have it for school assignments, not birthday parties, not soccer games, just for the large assignments. And then they can visualize what's due at the end of the month.
I want to emphasize a couple of things that you've said, because I know some parents are saying, "Oh, we already did that," or my high school sophomore has aged out of that. But what you're reminding us is to get back to basics, because we have had this interruption. So even though you think that your child may have aged out of it, maybe getting back to basics is exactly what they need right now.
And it's such a good point. And they haven't aged out of it. And what I hear actually from college advisors for the current freshmen and sophomores that, lost a couple of years of high school, they're struggling. They're not well organized. They don't have good study habits. And this, you are modeling for them good organization and good study habits. So
and if there's,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as you were saying, if they're still at home, things may have changed.
Yep.
So if you had a child who was studying in their room really well, it may have shifted. They may need company now. They may need to come downstairs or, be next to you, or, maybe they're up late and they need you to sit up with them. Not necessarily to do the work, but you can read a book and be there with them.
Yeah, exactly. If they see that you're reading and that you're not just scrolling through social media or, watching TV, you're going to be setting a good example and be a good role model if you're doing something other than just interacting with media, but actually interacting with them. I hear a lot of the problems from parents about kids going up in their room and they're on Discord, or they're gaming, or they're doing something other than the homework that's assigned to them. And you can have this tough conversation, which, I've done, you probably done it, where it says, hey, I'm not being hard on you. I'm teaching you habits and teaching you responsibility so I can have confidence in you to be independent one day, that I know that you can go away to college or go off to school or get a job, and I'll know that you'll be able to be responsible and take care of yourself. I want you to have your freedom. That's why I'm hounding you now, so that I have every confidence in you that you're going to be able to handle it yourself one day.
So now what do our students need to know? You told us some of the things that parents need to know.
Yeah. So number one is figure out or ask the teacher, what is the purpose of this assignment? What does this have to do with what we're studying, what we learned in school today? And there are a lot of high schools right now and middle schools that are doing sort of like paired curriculum. And know if yours is one of them, which is they're going to be really tricky, and they're going to be reading a book that somehow in English aligns with something that's going on in the history class. Okay. So maybe they're reading, a book about, Tale of Two Cities in English. And then in history class, you're reading about what was going on then, what was going on, in the turn of the century between, 1798 and 1815, what was going on then, what was going on in the world. And you have to figure that out, because they're doing that on purpose. Okay. The other thing is, how does this assignment fit into your learning goals? So does this fit into one of the goals that the teacher had for you, or benchmarks? Is your assignment about honing a skill, or memorizing concepts, or memorizing vocabulary? Are you supposed to be doing the homework to practice a skill that we're learning, like in math, a procedure in math? Or is it about understanding the concept of in physics, or a concept of homeostasis in science? Go ahead.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
If you have others, let's do those. Otherwise, I was going to ask you about the report card.
What must I show that I know? Figure that out. What must I show that I know? What do I have to prove to the teacher that I know? So sometimes there's buzzwords she'll use. Repeat the buzzwords she uses. Teachers like when you write down in an assignment or a test something that they've actually said, because they think, oh gosh, you were listening. Okay, that's great. So, what does the assignment have to do with what we learned in class? Is the assignment about memorizing content or demonstrating a skill? Will the test be about memorizing content and spitting it back or demonstrating a skill? Okay. What happens, guys, what happens between middle school and high school, you are going to be shifted without them telling you from rote learning, memorizing, spitting it back out, to organizing, pulling together material, compare and contrast stuff. So you guys need to be ahead of the game, because what's demanded of you in high school is a lot more mental organization than you had before then, okay? The reading tests in 8th grade demand a lot more mental organization. It's a lot more compare and contrast questions and synthesizing of material than just repeating something that was in the content in those 4th grade reading tests. Here you go. Here's the other thing. Are there relationships or sequences in the material I can identify? Because that's often something that the teacher will embed in homework that she won't tell you, or he won't tell you in class. And then think to yourself while you're doing the homework or studying, how will that teacher try to use this information in a test? How will they set this up in the test? What could they possibly test me on? Okay. Sometimes they go to the back to the extra help questions or the extra practice questions to get their test questions, or use that. And I think that's where high schoolers are really blown away, because they'll say, well, dude, this wasn't even, she didn't go through this in class. You're right. I've heard that one, right? Yeah, they didn't go through it in class. And you should have taken the initiative to say, hey, I'm supposed to apply what I learned to a question she's going to give me on a test. So know that's some of the things that they're going to pull on you. Okay, so you got that? So these are just a new way of thinking about studying. It's being proactive and not reactive.
So we should share these with our students. I want to remind everybody,
go through it.
Go through this with our students. Let's talk a little about, you gave me this slide, and I want to put it up. Let's talk a little bit about COVID's profound toll on math and reading scores, so we can share with the audience exactly what happened.
So actually, you see, with the math scores, how much they went down, because in the 8th grade, it depends on procedures and skills that you learned in 6th and 7th grade.
So do we know the concepts in 8th grade, which concepts that they may be weak in, that we may need to lecture?
So in 8th grade, you're really looking at, the pre-algebra concepts, the, distribution concepts. So manipulating numbers, not just adding them up and or subtracting them, but really, those types of questions that typically as a parent you'd see, like the questions that come, math questions in parentheses, with parentheses. Okay, so those kinds of skills, and that was something that that the 8th graders missed out in half of 6th and most of 7th.
So we can practice those at home. That's something that we can do. We can practice those at home.
Go, and be smart about it. Go online. There's lots of free material online to learn the pre-algebra skills. There's a lot of really great stuff from Khan Academy, and no, I'm not paid by them, and other tutors, other math tutors online that are free resources for your child to learn these skills. But that's what's going to what I believe kept them back on the tests with 8th grade. The 4th grade test was much more concrete. The 8th grade test required more manipulation of mathematical information. So that's harder. With reading, you have the basic reading skills. And that's why I think the reading skills overall were not such a big decline as in math, because you're reading, and reading builds on reading.
So now our eighth graders, if they have completed eighth grade, what reading skills should we expect from them? I'm assuming it's some type of reading comprehension, which is something that we can work on at home, because we can read the same things and discuss what we read. We can even do it
Right.
with movies.
Right. So it's, again, when you're reading or you have a reading assignment, you guys think about what you're reading. Just don't read the words. Understand, when was this book written? Okay. I can't tell you how, when I used to teach, and I, would have my high schoolers read The Crucible by Arthur Miller, and say, well, when did Arthur Miller write this play? And we had the book. When do you think this book was written? And half of them would argue and say, well, this was written, like in the 1600s or during the Salem witch trials. And then I'd tell them the real story about when it was written. No, and it was about a different type of a witch trial. Okay. That happened in the 1950s. Okay. McCarthyism. Okay. And then they were like blown away. Oh, gee, why didn't the history teacher ever tell us that? That's so cool. I didn't know that. That's what this was really about. So if your teacher's not telling you that, look at the back of the book, read the front, the foreword. Go Google it. Hey, when did this author write this book, and why? Why did they write this book? What's the secret meaning behind it? What are they really trying to say? Because down the road, those are the types of answers you're going to need to know in high school and also in college. That's what critical reading's about, is knowing, the why, not just about the what.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It really does. It really does. Thank you for this. I encourage everyone to go through and pull out the nuggets for you, but also the ones that you want to share with your teens, because it may sound like things that you already know, but sometimes what we know and what we do are two different things.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's like, learning should not be a mystery. Kids really want structure, and they want to know why they're learning this, why it's important. And if the teacher's not delivering it, help your kids see it. Be proactive and help your child understand the purpose of this and why it's important for them. They need buy-in, right?
Yeah. And is it okay that we share with them that, listen, because of the pandemic, everybody's in this spot, but we're all trying to jump this hurdle together, because you can't just stay in a spot, or you can't always be 2 steps behind. You still got to make up. You got to make it up. Make up.
You got to make it up. What happened with COVID is the future came at us faster. Okay. And they need to learn that that's the reality. And they are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And the kids need to know that as parents, we have confidence in them. We want to understand what their goals and expectations are. We don't want to keep telling them what we expect of them. We want to know what they expect of themselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
We have confidence in them. They can do this. They can do this. They're not alone. And what are your goals and expectations? Because you are a full-formed human being, and we want to respect that.
Yeah, exactly. And they have the choice. They have a choice. And if they see that they have a goal, it's going to be easier for them to commit to doing the homework, commit to, deciding whether or not they want to work for really good grades or go for a scholarship. They need to understand that they have more control than they realize.
Okay. You mentioned Khan Academy, which is a great resource for math. Are there any other resources out there that parents may want to use, or at least look at?
Yeah. So you can go on, there are some online resources, even old ones from like CTY. They have old resources, old videos online. And then if you just, there's.
What is CTY? What does that stand for?
That is Center for Talented Youth. Okay.
Okay.
So they have old resources online, and you guys, you can find YouTube videos from Math Tutor, and I think it's mathtutor.com. Go to Quizlets. There are some old Quizlets on there that are really good, that are free, that you can download and utilize for studying and help quiz yourself on the way to school. So just be creative. And then I always tell kids this, and it shocks them. I say, focus on the solution, not the problem. Okay. So it's like, well, I don't understand this. I don't, I didn't understand this concept, or I didn't understand what the teacher taught. All right, that's okay. Let's focus on the solution. How can we get it done? Instead of focusing on the problem, because the focusing on the problem will not get you closer to your goal.
I gotcha. Yeah, that's very good life advice. I want to point out, Jessica's putting the resources in the comment section. When you see the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, just remember that Sherry showed us that that it's the older stuff that's free, that your child does not have to be a member of the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth.
You can actually go online and find like old videos on YouTube that are still, really relevant.
And the Duke Tip program is a similar program, and they have similar stuff.
Yeah. So, they had, unfortunately, a lot of things that shut down during COVID. So that's
right.
why I go and just find the old videos on my YouTube. And I love watching these guys. There's some fabulous, there's the guy, AP History. Go on the AP History YouTube, and he is an amazing teacher. Okay. And you're going to find that Khan Academy has that. And even if you're not, even if you are not taking the AP test, and you say, hey, I'm not taking that. These guys are such great teachers that it's worth watching, just because they are able to shrink all this information down in a half hour. And watch those before you study or crack open the big textbook, because they tell you what you're going to need to know while you're reading. It's going to help you read through it easier.
That's great advice, and that's a good tip. Do it. Watch them first, then read it.
Watch the videos first if you're studying history, or even if you're studying Shakespeare. And if there's some videos to watch before that, and just encapsulating, like Romeo and Juliet in 5-minute videos, just before you start the book, it's really going to help you.
So that's a good tip, parents, that you can share with your kids, but they still have to read the book, because the teacher knows about the videos, and the teacher knows what's not in the video and in the book. That will be on the test.
That's the other thing, because now, teachers have this technology where they can see if you plagiarized.
Yeah.
So that's not a good, that's not a good thing. But, do utilize the resources that are available for pre-reading and pre-teaching yourself. So if you're going, let's just say you're going into high school, and hey, you've never had a biology course before, or you've never had, history, history of ancient Greece or ancient Rome. Go do some pre-teaching, and parents can do that with them. And yeah, it sounds like a lot of work, but you're worth it. You're worth it. Do it so it's easier for you.
I love that. They're worth it, parents. They're worth it. So we can spend the time doing that, whether it's a video or a podcast.
Hey, I always tell this to kids: knowledge is something that they can never take away from you. Yeah. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for joining us and for all of this helpful information. I know that report card scared a lot of families. Everybody always wants the best for their students, and that scared us. And especially those of us who are wondering, for some it confirmed things, and for others we're, all of a sudden we're anxious about the fact that, did our child score lower than expected? And now what can I do? So thank you for giving us some tips and sharing that information with us.
I'm so happy I could have shared it with you. It's great being with you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Please join us on Thursday for the Inside Scoop with Sue, when she will speak with another person who has an expertise or experience that's going to be of interest to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.